I was sorting through my late husband's effects when his sister arrived with the matchmaker's advertisement. Margaret, we shared the same name. Though she'd made clear years ago that hers carried more weight than mine, swept into the parlor wearing that smile, the one that had never meant kindness for me. "Dear Margaret," she said, settling into Thomas's chair like she already owned it. She did. Really. The house belonged to Thomas's brother now. Everything did. "We've found a solution to your situation." I kept folding Thomas's shirts. The fabric still smelled like him tobacco and bay rum and something else I could never name. 5 years of marriage, and I'd never figured out that smell. Maybe I'd never tried hard enough. She placed the advertisement on the table between us. Matchmaker's notice, Montana territory. Wealthy rancher seeking capable woman for partnership in managing prosperous ranch. The paper was cheap, the ink slightly smudged. "We've already written to him on your behalf." Her voice carried that false sweetness I'd learned to recognize. "Mr. James Thornton, very successful. He sent the train fare." I looked up then, studied her face. The satisfaction barely hidden there. The anticipation in her eyes. And I understood. This was the punchline, the final joke. They were sending plain Margaret their name for me. Never just Margaret to a wealthy rancher who wanted a wife. They expected him to take one look at me and send me back. Expected my humiliation to be complete. I remembered Thomas's mother at Sunday dinner, commenting on my plain dress while Thomas looked at his plate. Remembered his sisters laughing about my accent. I'd come from German immigrants. Spoke with traces of it still. Remembered 5 years of small cruelties. Death by 1,000 tiny cuts. Thomas had never joined in, but he'd never stopped them either. His silence had been its own kind of verdict. "The train leaves in 3 weeks. Margaret continued, "We thought it best to give you time to prepare yourself." After she left, I sat in the empty parlor as shadows lengthened. The house felt hollow. It had felt hollow since Thomas died of pneumonia last winter, but his family's presence had filled it with a different kind of emptiness. Now even that was gone. I had nowhere to go. No money. Thomas had controlled that. And his brother had inherited it. No family of my own left. 3 weeks until they evicted me from this house that had never felt like home. That night, I lit a candle and wrote my own letter to James Thornton. My hand shook at first, then steadied. I was honest, brutally so. I told him I was coming because I had no choice. I told him his family no, Thomas's family. They'd never been mine, had arranged this. And why? I told him I wasn't beautiful. They'd made sure I knew this. Plain Margaret. Not pretty enough for their son. But I could manage accounts. I spoke 3 languages. I knew ranching from my years with Thomas, when he was alive and I was useful. If he found me unsuitable, I would understand. I asked only that he let me work for passage back east, where I might find employment as a governess. I sealed the letter before I could reconsider. Walked to the post office at dawn. Before the town woke, the metallic sound of it hitting the bottom of the post box felt irreversible. Some choices you make. Others make you. I still don't know which this was. 3 weeks passed like years and moments both. Margaret and her sisters came to see me off at the station, their anticipation poorly disguised as concern. They dressed for the occasion. I wore my black wool dress, widow's weeds, still. Though Thomas had been gone 8 months now. "Write to us," Margaret said, touching my arm with false warmth. let us know how things develop. The train whistle saved me from answering. I found my seat and watched Ohio disappear behind me. The landscape changed slowly, green hills giving way to flat prairie, then gradual rises toward distant mountains. Other passengers avoided the widow in black. I was grateful. 3 days gave me too much time to think anyway. I rehearsed rejection in my head, practiced holding my chin level when he told me there'd been a mistake, imagined his face, disappointment, perhaps disgust. I prepared 17 different speeches for maintaining my dignity. I had none prepared for courtesy. Silver Creek was smaller than I'd expected, dustier. The platform was weathered wood, the station building more shed than structure. I was the only woman who disembarked. I stood there with my trunk beside me and my hands folded at my waist. Steady, despite everything. The afternoon sun was bright and unforgiving. It showed everything: the dust on my dress from travel, the age of my bonnet, the careful mending on my gloves. A man separated from the station wall. Tall, maybe 40, weathered by sun and wind. He wore working clothes despite his supposed wealth, no suit. Just clean trousers and a shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. He moved with economy, each step purposeful, and his eyes assessed me the way I'd seen men assess horses. Not cruel, just measuring. Mrs. Brennan. His voice was quiet, careful, like he was gentling something wild. I kept my chin level. Mr. Thornton. James. He picked up my trunk like it weighed nothing. Thomas used to make me carry my own bags. Said it built character? I think now it just built resentment. I got your letter. You were honest. I appreciated that. I'd prepared for many things, not for this. I've taken a room for you at Mrs. Chen's boarding house. He continued. I thought we might talk first. Before any decisions are made, the boarding house was a 10-minute wagon ride. We didn't speak. I sat stiffly, hyper-aware of the space between us, the way the wagon jolted over ruts, the dust that rose from the wheels. He drove with the same economy of movement, no wasted effort. Everything deliberate. Mrs. Chen's establishment was clean, spare, smelling of lye soap and tea. My trunk disappeared upstairs with a young man who might have been her son. The separation from my last possessions created brief panic. Everything I owned in the world, gone from sight. The dining room's empty this time of day. James said, Mrs. Chen makes good coffee. I followed him. Told myself this was just business. Told myself to breathe. The coffee came in thick ceramic cups, practical and scarred with use. I wrapped my hands around mine, needing something to hold. The liquid was strong, bitter, good. I got your letter, he said, 3 days after I'd already sent the fare. I want you to know I didn't ask the matchmaker for beauty. My jaw tightened. What did you ask for? A partner. He met my eyes directly. No flinching. No embarrassment. Someone who can think. Who can talk about something beyond weather and social calls. My late wife. Ellen? He paused, and something shifted in his expression. She was beautiful. Everyone told me so. We had 3 years before the fever took her. I counted maybe 3 real conversations between us. The loneliness in those words surprised me. I'd learned to defend myself against cruelty. No one had taught me what to do with honesty. James asked what I'd meant in my letter about managing accounts. I explained slowly at first. then with more confidence. Thomas had been away with the cattle often. I'd handled the books, negotiated with buyers, managed the household budget. When he asked about languages, I listed them: English, German from my parents, French from a teacher in my youth. "I've got 12 men working for me," he said, leaning forward slightly. 4 speak only German, 3 only English, 2 Spanish. I manage the Spanish. Struggle through German. There's always confusion, always mistakes that cost money. He pulled a piece of paper from his pocket, unfolded it carefully. A contract, written in clear, firm handwriting. 6 months, he said, sliding it across the table. You manage the accounts, translate when needed, help organize operations. At the end, if we suit each other, we make it permanent. If not, I pay your fare east and provide references for employment, plus a salary, regardless of outcome. I read every word twice. The terms were more than fair, they were generous. But it wasn't the terms that made my throat tight. It was the respect in the offer. He was negotiating with me, not dictating, not judging, not measuring my worth by my face or my figure or whether I pleased his eye. Partnership. He'd called it. Thomas had never asked what I thought about anything that mattered. Only about supper. Only about small, safe things. I'd forgotten I had opinions on anything else. "I can start tomorrow," I said. When I shook his hand across the table, his grip was warm, firm, brief, professional. My hand tingled after. I told myself it was from the ride, from nerves, from anything but what it actually was. I was getting good at lying to myself. That night in my room at Mrs. Chen's, I unpacked my trunk. Everything I owned fit in 3 drawers. I hung my 2 dresses, folded my undergarments, placed my mother's photograph on the nightstand. In the mirror, I studied my face. Plain Margaret. Flat nose, thin lips, eyes too close together. Or so I'd been told. Looking now, I saw something else. Strength in the jaw, intelligence in the eyes, capability in the set of my shoulders. Maybe they'd been wrong about more than they knew. Maybe I'd been wrong too. James's ranch house was larger than I'd expected. 2 stories, solid construction, windows that caught morning light, but inside chaos. Papers everywhere. No system. Receipts stuffed in coffee tins and tallies scrawled on envelope backs. 6 hours to understand his fiscal year, I found errors that had cost him hundreds. The work was satisfying in a way I'd forgotten work could be: creating order from confusion, making sense of numbers, finding patterns. This was my element. This was where I belonged. James brought coffee at 10 that first morning. Didn't ask if I wanted it. Just set the cup beside my elbow and left. The next morning, same thing. By the 3rd day, I realized I was listening for his footsteps. Afternoons. He took me around the property, showed me the operations, the breeding schedules, the pasture rotations, the water sources. Introduced me to the hands. Klaus, the German foreman, had weathered skin and patient eyes. When I translated James's questions about breeding schedules, Klaus's face flooded with relief. 3 months, he said in German. 3 months. I have questions. Cannot ask. Cannot explain. You are a gift from God. I laughed. Actually laughed. James watched me with something I couldn't name in his expression. "What did he say?" James asked. "That he has 3 months of questions he couldn't ask you." "Then we'd better get started." We spent the afternoon with Klaus and his charts. me translating, James and Klaus planning. The ease of it surprised me. 3 languages flowing together, creating understanding where confusion had been. I was useful, not decorative, not judged, useful. Small kindnesses accumulated. The lamp moved closer when James caught me squinting over ledgers in afternoon light. A tin of tea appearing on the kitchen shelf 3 days after I'd mentioned missing it. His quiet good morning each day. Steady as clockwork. Evening became ritual. After supper, which Mrs. Chen sent over, bless her, we sat on the porch with coffee. At first, we discussed the day's work. My questions, his explanations, the ranch's challenges, opportunities, plans. Then it deepened. One night, he told me about Ellen. How beautiful she'd been. How lonely their marriage. I felt like I was supposed to be satisfied just looking at her, he said, staring into his coffee. But I wanted to talk, wanted to share ideas, wanted more than just a pretty face across the breakfast table. I understood that loneliness. Thomas and I had shared a bed, but nothing deeper. No real conversation, no meeting of minds, just proximity, mistaken for intimacy. Your family, James said another night. Your late husband's family. They were wrong about you. They might say the same about me, I said lightly. No. He turned to look at me directly. They were wrong. You're one of the most capable people I've ever met. Man or woman, your mind is... He paused, searching for words. Sharp, clear. You see patterns I miss. Solutions I wouldn't find. That's worth more than any beauty. I went to bed early that night and cried for 20 minutes. I still didn't know why. Relief. Maybe. Or grief for all the years I'd believed them instead of believing myself. Days blurred into weeks. I stopped flinching when James entered a room. Stopped expecting criticism. The absence of cruelty became its own kind of miracle. I noticed when he was late with the morning coffee. Noticed when he was quiet at supper. When did I start reading his silences? When did they start meaning something? I caught myself setting 2. Plates before remembering 2. Old habits, I thought. New habits, I corrected. I didn't know which was more dangerous. One night, discussing whether Klaus should move to the east pasture, I realized I'd been looking forward to this all day. Not the work. This... him. The sound of his voice. The way he listened. The space we'd created where I could think out loud without fear. I was falling in love with him. The thought came clear as lightning at midnight, jolting me awake. I was falling in love, and it would ruin everything. 93 days left until the 6 months ended. It felt like forever. It felt like no time at all. I didn't know which thought scared me more. You should learn the property boundaries on horseback, James said one morning. You'd be more useful if you could reach the different pastures independently. I agreed before thinking, then thought, I hadn't ridden since Thomas died. His family sold my mare the week after the funeral. Took the money, never mentioned it again. The mare James chose was gentle. Brown with white socks, patient eyes. He'd chosen carefully, I could see that in the way he adjusted the stirrup for my height, checked the saddle. His movements, slow and deliberate. I mounted. My hands shook. Thomas's voice in my head, you ride like a sack of grain. Margaret, can't you at least try to look competent? 5 years of that. 5 years of mockery for every attempt. every effort. Every moment I'd tried and failed to meet standards that shifted like sand. The shame of it flooded back thick, choking. I froze. Couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. "What is it?" James asked quietly. And somehow, I told him all of it. The words poured out like water from a cracked dam, 5 years of small cruelties condensed into 5 minutes. How they'd made me feel inadequate in everything. How I'd forgotten I could be capable because they'd told me I wasn't. Over and over. Until I believed them. When I finished, my face burned. Why had I told him that? Why had I revealed so much? James was quiet so long, I thought I'd disgusted him. Then my father used to say I was too soft for ranching. Said I spent too much time with books, not enough breaking horses. Wanted me harder, meaner. Thought gentleness was weakness. He adjusted my stirrup. His movements, careful. He was wrong. I built this ranch by treating animals and men with sense, not brutality. Your late husband's family, they were wrong too. About you. About what matters. He taught me then, patient, methodical, pointing out what I did right before suggesting adjustments. How to sit. How to hold the reins. How to signal the mare with subtle shifts of weight. By afternoon, I was cantering across the south pasture. By evening, I was laughing, actually laughing. Joy bubbling up from somewhere I'd thought was dead. The sound surprised me more than the riding. I'd forgotten I knew how to laugh. Forgotten I had any joy left that wasn't crushed or hidden or apologized for. That night on the porch, we talked until the stars came out. He told me about his difficult father, his dreams for the ranch, his failed first marriage. I shared my love of numbers, how patterns made sense when nothing else did, how accounting felt like solving puzzles, finding truth in columns of figures. "You're happiest in the study," he observed. "I can tell. Your whole face changes when you're working through problems." No one had ever noticed that before. No one had ever looked closely enough to see what made me happy. I was falling in love with him, and the certainty of it terrified me. Because the 6 months would end. Because men like him didn't choose women like me. Because hope was dangerous, and I'd survived this long by not hoping for anything. I lay awake that night, counting days. 93 until the contract ended. 93 days until he'd realize I was plain Margaret. Not worth keeping. Just useful enough for half a year. He said they were wrong about me. I wanted desperately to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him. October brought an early blizzard, the kind that catches you unprepared, turns the world white in minutes. Half the herd was trapped in the north pasture when it hit. James and the men rode out into the whiteout. I stood at the window watching him go. Wind already howling. Snow already obscuring the barn. The last glimpse I had was his back, steady in the saddle. Before white swallowed everything, I set up command post in the kitchen. Central location, warmth, practical. Men would come back for supplies I needed to be ready. I boiled water, prepared bandages, laid out extra blankets. Klaus returned first, half frozen, babbling in German. I grabbed his shoulders, made him focus. He needed rope, more lanterns, the medical kit. I assembled everything, gave him clear instructions, sent him back. 2 hands came in with frostbite fingers, white, panicked faces. I remembered my mother's treatments. Lukewarm water, not hot. Gentle warming, warm drinks, not alcohol. I handled it calmly, efficiently. my hands steady even as my heart raced. They looked at me with new respect. Not the rancher's bookkeeper, not the woman who translated, someone who could handle crisis. Hours passed. Men trickled back. James didn't. Klaus reported James had gone after strays in the canyon, alone, 3 hours ago. The clock ticked. I paced, made coffee I couldn't drink. Checked the window every few minutes, still white, still howling, still empty. Terror gripped my chest. If something happened to him, it wouldn't just be losing security. It wouldn't be losing the ranch or the job or the future I'd begun to imagine. It would be losing him, the first person who'd ever truly seen me. "You cannot go out," Klaus said when I started bundling up. Too dangerous. Then it's too dangerous for him to be out there alone. I snapped. In German, then English, my voice carrying authority that surprised us both. I took my mare, the gentle one, the one James had chosen for me, and rode into the dying storm. The world was white and howling. I could barely see past my horse's ears. But I'd learned this land over 3 months. Knew the canyon direction, the landmarks, the paths. I found him 2 miles out, almost missed him in the white. His horse, limping. Him on foot, leading it. Stumbling, hypothermic. "You damn fool, woman." He slurred when he saw me. "You should be safe." "Shut up and get on my horse," I snapped, and half dragged. Half pushed him into the saddle. He slumped over the mare's neck. I led them home through darkness and cold and wind that cut like knives. Terror made me capable. Love made me brave. At the house, I was all efficiency. Got him inside, stripped the wet clothes with shaking hands, wrapped him in blankets. Forced warm tea down his throat. Exactly as I'd handled the frostbite cases. Exactly as my mother had taught me. He watched me the whole time with something fierce in his eyes. Something that made my hands shake worse than the cold did. "You came for me," he said, finally, voice rough. "Yes, you could have died. So could you." We stared at each other. The air between us felt charged, electric, like the moment before lightning strikes. I should step back. I stepped closer instead. "Thank you," he whispered. I couldn't speak, just nodded. Because if I spoke, I'd say things I couldn't take back. Things about love and fear and how I'd rather die in a blizzard than live without him. We didn't talk about what it meant. Me riding out for him. But something had changed. The distance between us had collapsed. The space we'd maintained, professional, careful, was gone. Tomorrow I'd be afraid of this. Tonight I was just grateful he was alive. James recovered fast. Body strong even after near hypothermia. But something was different between us now. The ease had weight to it. Meaning. He watched me more. Spoke less. The air felt thick with unsaid things. I caught him staring. Looked away first. Always. Afraid of what he'd see if I held his gaze. Afraid of what I'd see. Friday brought the weekly mail. Mrs. Chen delivered it with the bread. 3 letters for James. 1 for me. Margaret's handwriting. Perfect. Precise. Each letter carefully formed. I took it to the study, closed the door, read it once quickly, then again, slowly. Thomas's brother was selling the family ranch. the land where I'd spent 5 years. Margaret wrote with false sympathy about how things change, how we all must move forward, how she hoped I was settling in well. The final paragraph: "We heard you're keeping house for some rancher out there. We hope you're earning your keep. Dear Margaret, in whatever way he requires, you always were practical about these things." The insinuation was clear, cruel, calculated. That I was whoring myself for security. That any man who wanted me must want me for that. Because what else could I possibly offer? That desperation had made me willing to degrade myself. I read it 3 times. Each time it cut deeper. 5 years of wounds reopening. Every insult, every dismissal, every time they'd made me feel dirty for existing in my own body. Suddenly I saw myself through their eyes, desperate, pathetic. Throwing myself at the first man who showed basic human decency. Night came. I packed. 3 months left on the contract. But I should leave now, before James pitied me for loving him. Before he saw Margaret's letter and wondered if it was true. Before I became more damaged than I already was. I folded clothes with shaking hands, tried not to cry, failed. "You're leaving." James stood in the doorway. How long had he been there? I couldn't look at him. "It's better this way." Ah, better for who? His voice was rough, raw. "Margaret." I saw the letter. You left it in the study. Shame flooded me. Of course he'd seen it. Of course he knew what she'd implied. "I should go," I said. "The 6 months will end anyway. I'll what?" He crossed the room. "Send you away, Margaret. I'm in love with you." The words hung in the air between us. Impossible. Unbearable. "You don't mean that," I said. "You're grateful because I'm useful. Because I saved you from the blizzard. Or, I'm grateful for those things." He interrupted. "But I love you because you're brilliant. Because you're sharp and brave. Because you see me. Because when we talk, I'm not lonely anymore. Because when I watch you work, I see someone fully alive. Because you laugh at my jokes and challenge my ideas and make this ranch make my life make sense." He was close now. Close enough I could see the desperation in his eyes. "Don't let them win," he said quietly. "Don't let people who never saw your value drive you away from someone who does." I was crying, years of hurt pouring out. He held me while I shook, his arms steady around me. And I couldn't remember the last time anyone had held me like this. Like I mattered. Like I was worth holding. When I finally quieted, he tipped my chin up. "Stay not because of the contract. Because I'm asking. Because I love you. Because I want to build a life with you." But I couldn't. I was too afraid. What if he was wrong? What if he woke up tomorrow and saw what they saw? "I need to think," I whispered. Something broke in his expression. But he nodded. Let me go. Left the room without another word. I sat on the bed with Margaret's letter and the wreckage of my packing. Sat there through the night as darkness became gray, became dawn. Margaret's voice in my head, "Earning your keep in whatever way he requires." Like I was nothing. Like I'd always been nothing. But James's voice, too. "I'm in love with you." like he meant it, like he saw something worth loving. I read Margaret's letter again in dawn light, and suddenly, clarity. Margaret was speaking from her own emptiness. Trapped in loveless marriage, beauty fading, nothing substantial beneath. She was cruel because she was desperate. She tore down because she had nothing to build. Thomas had never defended me, but never valued me either. His family measured worth in appearance because they had no capacity for depth. James was different. James asked about my skills before my face, valued my mind, saw me completely, and loved what he saw. This was my choice, not desperation, not gratitude. Mine. I could stay afraid, or I could choose the life I wanted. I chose. I found James in the barn at dawn. He was feeding the horses, moving mechanically, looking like he hadn't slept. When he heard me, he turned. The hope and fear in his face nearly broke me. "I'm staying," I said. Relief crashed across his features. Started to speak. "Wait," I said. "Let me finish. I'm not staying because I'm desperate. I'm not staying because I'm grateful. I'm staying because I love you. Because I choose this. Choose you. Choose us. Because I finally understand what partnership actually means." "You're sure?" His voice was rough, uncertain in a way I'd never heard. I spent all night reading Margaret's letter. I said, reading it and understanding. She's trapped in her own emptiness. They all are. They measure worth by appearance because they have nothing deeper to measure. You asked about my skills before my face. You value my mind. You see me really see me, and you love what you see. I stepped closer. I was afraid. Afraid you'd wake up and realize I'm just plain Margaret after all. Afraid I'd let myself hope and you'd crush it. But you know what I realized? What their opinion doesn't matter. It never did. The only opinion that matters is mine. And yours. And I think my voice broke slightly. I think I'm worth loving. I think we could build something real. Something that lasts. Not because we have to, because we choose to. Yes, he said simply. Yes to all of that. He crossed to me, cupped my face in his hands. "You're sure?" he asked again. One last check. One last offer to let me leave. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. He kissed me then. Gentle at first, then deeper. It felt like coming home. Like finding a place I'd been searching for without knowing I was lost. When we finally pulled apart, I was laughing and crying both. "What?" he asked, smiling. "They sent me here as a joke," I said. "As punishment. As the final humiliation. And instead, they gave me exactly what I needed. A chance to find someone who values what I actually have to offer. A chance to choose my own life." "Our life," he corrected gently. "Our life?" I agreed. We stood there in the barn doorway as dawn broke fully behind us. Hay dust dancing in new light. The smell of horses and leather and the promise of morning. I'd spent 5 years letting other people define my worth. Thomas's silence, his family's cruelty, Margaret's venom. I'd forgotten I get to decide. Forgotten my opinion of myself matters most. Love isn't rescuing, it's seeing. James didn't save me. He saw me clearly and loved what he saw. And I saw him. That's partnership. That's the difference. In that moment, Standing in the barn, with dawn breaking, and his hand in mine, I claimed my life. Not the one they tried to force on me, the one I chose, the one I deserved, the one I'd fight for. We should probably tell Klaus, James said finally. He'll want to know his translator isn't leaving. I laughed. We should probably do more than that. What are you thinking? I'm thinking, I said slowly, that if we're doing this, we do it right, properly. I want to marry you, James Thornton. Not because of any contract, because I love you, because I choose you. His smile was like sunrise. April, he suggested. Give us time to do it properly. Plan something. Invite people who actually matter. April, I agreed. But I'm not inviting Thomas's family. Good, he said firmly. They don't deserve to witness this. We walked back to the house hand in hand. The ranch was waking around us, Klaus emerging from the bunkhouse, smoke rising from the cookhouse chimney, horses nickering for their morning feed. This was my life now, the one I'd chosen, the one I'd claimed. And it was magnificent. We married in April. Quiet ceremony. Just us and Mrs. Chen as witness. I wore a new dress, blue. Not black. No more widow's weeds. No more mourning. I was done with that. James said his vows in a steady voice. I said mine without faltering. When he kissed me, it felt like a beginning. The real beginning. 6 months later, the ranch had transformed. Accounts immaculate. Communication clear. We'd hired 2 more hands, built a new barn, expanded the herd by 40%. We were profitable. Successful. But that wasn't what mattered most. What mattered was the morning coffee ritual. The way he still brought it at 10, even though I could get it myself. The evening conversations that never ran dry. How he asked my opinion on every major decision. How I asked how we'd become true partners, equal, respectful, deep. We finished each other's thoughts now, laughed at the same things, built together. The town had accepted me too, not as James's wife, though I was that, but as the capable woman who ran half the ranch. Other ranchers came to me with questions about accounting, breeding records, business decisions. When German immigrants needed translation, they sought me out. I'd found respect I'd never had in Ohio. Then Margaret came, summer, unannounced. She appeared at the ranch in a hired buggy, ostensibly to check on me. She'd aged poorly. Bitter lines carved around her mouth, disappointment etched in every feature. She clearly expected to find confirmation Margaret desperate, working as a servant, humiliated as predicted. Instead, she found me in the study, consulting with Klaus in German about breeding schedules. James was beside me, adding notes. We were laughing about something Klaus had said. Margaret stood in the doorway, watched, saw the easy intimacy, the mutual respect, the clear partnership. Her face went tight with something ugly. You look... well, she said, finally. The words tasted like poison in her mouth. I am well. I replied simply. I'm exactly where I belong. She stayed for tea, made awkward conversation, left the next morning without saying goodbye. That evening, James found me on the porch, Our usual spot. Our ritual. "You all right?" he asked. "Better than that." I took his hand. "I'm grateful. They sent me here as a joke." "They thought they were punishing me." "Instead, they gave me exactly what I needed, a chance to find someone who values what I actually have to offer. A chance to choose my own life." "Our life," he said, echoing our barn conversation from months ago. "Our life." I agreed, smiling. I'd learned something profound in Montana dust and mountain air. Beauty fades, but competence, intelligence, and character endure. The right person sees your true value, not what society says you should be, but what you actually are. Thomas's family measured worth in appearances because they had nothing deeper to measure. James measured worth in substance because he understood what creates lasting partnership. Some matches are made by matchmakers. Some are forged through shared work, mutual respect, and the courage to see beyond what others value to what actually matters. We built our partnership in ledgers and livestock, in language and land management. But we built our love in something deeper, in being fully seen, fully valued, fully chosen. And I would choose him. Choose us every single day. Not because I have to, because I want to. That's the difference. That's everything. "Margaret," James called from the doorway one evening as I sat writing letters. "Klaus has questions about the new pasture rotation." I stood, leaving my correspondence half finished, walked toward my husband, my partner, my choice, toward the life I'd claimed, the love I'd chosen, the dignity I'd finally found, the lesson that freed me. Your perfect match values what makes you capable, not just what makes you decorative. Never let others' limited vision define your worth. I walk toward James, toward our life, toward the choice I make every morning when I wake beside him. Some prisons have locks. Some have voices that echo in your head long after the speakers are gone. I walked out of mine when I finally understood the only opinion of me that matters is my own. And I think I'm magnificent.